Good morning. You are listening to the Photography Made Simple podcast with me, your host, Audrey-Ann from Live Snap Love, where I aim to help you capture the beauty of your days through photography. Now, I've made more mistakes than I can count over the last 17 years in photography, and I definitely took longer to get to where I wanted to be because of them. And I'm going to hazard a guess that if you are a new photographer and you're listening to this, you are a lot like me back then. You want to get great photos and you want to get them as quickly as possible. In fact, please. Thank you very much. And because of that, I know that it can be tempting to try to take shortcuts or hope that if you can just save up enough money to get a new lens or upgrade your camera, then that is the thing that's going to make all the difference. Or you'll be endlessly searching on the internet to try and find some, secret from a photographer you admire about what their secret to getting great photos are, or you'll be hoping for a quick tip that's going to make all the difference for you, or just some pearl of wisdom that is going to help make it all come together. And I know that that's not exactly how it works, which is why today I want to share 11 things with you that I think you should know right now, right from the get-go, right at the start of your photography journey. Things that I wish someone had told me. And in fact, I'm guessing, but I know that many people told me, but I didn't listen to. So I'm sharing those with you in the hope that you will pay more attention than I did. Now, if you are not a new photographer, but you're listening to this, and you are still struggling to get the images you see in your head, then this is still for you. So although I'm saying a new photographer, when I was 3 years into my photography journey, I was still needing to hear a lot of these things. And I'm willing to bet that if you've been shooting for a while, you still can't get that connection between what you see in your head to translate into the camera. One of these things is the culprit that's holding you back. So wherever you are, whether you're brand new, been shooting for a few years and not getting the images you want, my goal with this podcast is to help save you some of your time, your energy, your bandwidth, and yes, probably your money as well, so that you can get to where you want to be faster and with way less frustration. So let's go ahead, get started, dive in to the 11 things I wish all new photographers knew. So the very first one is to realize just how much there is to learn. You've maybe come to realize this already. If you want to go beyond taking snapshots with your photos, you need to learn about several things simultaneously. You need to learn about your camera settings, shooting in manual mode. You need to learn about the focus modes, how your focusing techniques work with different focusing modes. You need to learn about white balance, your light, your composition, all of these things so that you can get images that are more interesting and engaging than your typical snapshots. And that's only on the photography side, as in taking photos in camera. That's not even getting started on the editing side of things. And as you progress in your photography journey, you will find there's always new things and techniques to learn. But just in order to get those images looking good and less like snapshots, there is a lot of things to learn. And I know that new photographers get overwhelmed because of this sheer amount of information that you need to absorb. And you can find yourself running about like a headless chicken, learning one thing and it leads you onto something else and onto something else. But the good news is, and this is the key takeaway here, you can make this totally manageable by not trying to learn everything at once. Although it seems like you do, there's actually a really logical path to learning photography. And if you approach it in that way, you're going to get to where you want to be a lot quicker. Now, this leads me very neatly onto the second thing I want to share with you, which is to try and take it one step at a time. I know from experience, it is so easy to get frustrated when learning photography because you feel like when you're doing all that zipping about on the internet and you're going from blog post to blog post and you're YouTubing it and doing everything else, you pick up so much information. But nothing's actually coming together. And this is when you still can't get the image you see in your head and you get frustrated. And I did, because I was at it for 3 years. I had so much knowledge about photography, but I was winging it in the camera. I just couldn't get what I saw in my head to become a reality. And if this is you too, it's probably because you are reading lots of tips and tricks and random tutorials which don't actually go together. So you're trying to do sort of step 10 when you completely missed out step 2. And that is honestly so exactly what happened to me. And when I say so many of my autumn students, at least half of them, that is where they came to me for learning in my Auto to Awesome program. So if that's you and you feel like you've been at this a while, so much information, but not getting the images you want, I can tell you right now, you are 100%, you are definitely not unique or alone. So my advice to you here is to break it down into more manageable chunks. And you can do that by getting yourself a proper learning curriculum. Just like you would if you wanted to learn anything else. One of these things that I find frustrating, and I did this myself, so I get it, is we somehow think that we can learn a very complicated subject like photography DIYing it on the internet, and that we will get there quickly doing it that way. It doesn't work. If you were going to learn the piano, are you really just going to learn from learning random notes if you wanted to play a song on the piano? No, you'll start learning it in a structure that moves you forward, learning different chords that go together for simple songs, and then getting more and more advanced. So that's what I want you to do here. I want you to break it down into manageable steps so that it comes together quicker for you. And when you do it this way, by learning things in the order they need to be learned, you're not skipping ahead. You're not missing all those bits of information that actually connect the dots. It connects one thing to the next thing and helps it all make sense. Now, I do have something that can help you with this, and that's my photography starter guide and checklist. It's basically a beginner's learning curriculum for you so that you can know what you need to learn. And it's completely free. I know, I'm very good to you. So you can go ahead and get that at livesnaplove.com/blueprint. That's livesnaplove.com/blueprint. And I'll leave a link to that around where you're listening to this podcast episode. So regardless of where you are, click on the description for the podcast episode and you'll find links there. Okay, let's move on now to number 3. And that is that shooting in manual mode matters. Now, when I was first starting out, I knew that I had to move away from auto. So if I wanted better photos, I was not going to get them staying in the auto mode. So I moved on to aperture priority mode, and that's great. That's a great place to start. And I stayed there for around the 3 years that I've been mentioning a long time here, that it took me 3 years to get control. And I was shooting in aperture priority mode for most of that time. I was choosing my own aperture, my own ISO number, and the camera only had to choose one setting for me. And I believed that this was going to give me enough control to get the photos I wanted. And I couldn't see the point about making the final step of switching to manual mode and controlling all 3 settings myself. And I did this for quite a long time, as I said, 3 years. And it was at this point, after 3 years, I was doing so much, had so much information, I was really thinking about giving it up because my photos were okay. And there were some situations where I lucked out and I got images that I really liked. But there were certain images I just definitely couldn't get no matter what I did. And worse, I really didn't know what I needed to do to get them. And this is where I was talking about getting really frustrated because you've got all this knowledge. You are taking control of most of the settings in your camera. But, oh my God, you just can't get that image out of your head. And it turns out that learning how to shoot in manual mode was absolutely critical. Now, I cannot say that I wasn't told this, and you probably can't say it the same either, because I was told over and over again that I needed to learn how to shoot in manual mode. But I just didn't understand what a huge difference it would make until I actually made the switch. Now, I'm going to read you a comment from one of my Auto to Awesome students that actually says it all. So it's Kathleen. She said, on module 2 and loving it. Changing to manual mode has been a game changer. I totally see what you mean now, Audrey, about how images just don't come out the way you envisage them on auto or any of the semi-automatic modes. Today, I felt empowered. And that was I screenshot the comment that she'd left on Facebook, because that is exactly the difference that you feel. You suddenly go, oh, I get it. I understand now. I understand why it's not been working out. And you feel empowered because you feel like you've just unlocked a door somewhere. So learning how to use manual mode correctly was definitely a turning point for me in photography. It was the point at which I was able to get those images that I hadn't been able to previously. And it definitely was this point where I just felt like I turned a corner. And I see this time and time again from students who come into Auto to Awesome, who've been doing this for a while and still not getting the images that they see in their head. So if you want to save yourself from 3 years of frustration, move from auto to aperture priority mode. Absolutely, it's a great stepping stone. But then there's a crucial bit. Take that final step to switching to manual mode. I promise you will be so glad you did. It really does make such a difference in photography. Okay, let's move on now to number 4. And that is that light is the key component of any image. So another thing I wish I had paid more attention to in the beginning was the light. But the truth is, and this is where I'm coming back to learning photography in order, is that until you've mastered shooting in manual mode and you understand manual mode, it's actually hard to master light. So those two kind of things go together. It's hard to master one without having mastered the other. So start by mastering manual mode and then go on to learning about light. Now, as I said, the two kind of go together. So that's why in my Auto to Awesome program, you'll learn how to shoot in manual mode first. And then we immediately, very next module, we move on to learning about light, because the two of them are intrinsically linked. Now, truly learning about light does take some time, and we have a second course on that called Mastering Natural Light. But you can get the basics down in just a week or so, just by learning some key strategies of how to use available light in different situations like window light, sunny days, cloudy days. So light is one of those things that you will continue to learn and experiment throughout your photography journey. So this is never a one and done scenario. As I say, we have a whole course on light called Mastering Natural Light. But just get some basics down right there at the start when you're learning about manual mode. Immediately learn how to use light in various situations. And with just that basics down, you will move your images from being, snapshots to kind of, wow, this is so much better. You'll instantly notice a difference in your image. So those two things, learn manual mode and then learn some basics about light. You can get more in depth later on. Just get started with the basics for now, and you will get so much better images, I promise you. Okay, let's move on now. I'm just going to do a very quick recap because I feel like we've covered quite a lot so far already. So the first thing is to realize that there is a lot to learn. This isn't going to be something that you'll learn in, a couple of weeks and then you're done, or that you'll learn just by scrolling a few podcast episodes or scrolling through a few YouTube videos or blog posts or wherever you get your information from just now. There's a lot to learn. The second thing is, because there's so much to learn, you really need to take it one step at a time and get yourself a learning curriculum for learning photography. Ideally, take a course. And if you want to, Auto to Awesome is sitting there waiting for you. You can join right now and everything's laid out for you. But if you're DIYing it, create your own learning curriculum. We can get that free blueprint to help you. The next one is that shooting in manual mode matters. It's going to make such a difference that you might not be aware of. If you're currently shooting in aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode, make that final step. It will make a difference. And the next one was that light is the key component to any image. So as soon as you've switched over from manual mode, or to manual mode, I should say, go ahead and start learning about light. Okay, number 5 is don't fear using a high ISO. Now, this is another one that I hear all the time. You don't want to push your ISO number too high because you've heard, quite rightly, that in order to get less noise in your images, you need to use a low ISO. So that is true. High ISOs lead to more noise in an image. But it's even more important to remember 2 things. 1, when you keep your ISO low and it results in an underexposed image, you will actually have more noise than if you kept the ISO high and exposed correctly. 2, when you keep your ISO low and you end up lowering your shutter speed to counteract it, you'll get soft images due to motion blur. You can't fix motion blur in editing, but you can fix noise. So it's better to have a noisy image than a soft one. So moral of this particular story, use the ISO number you need in order to get the correct exposure and have your other settings where you want them, and don't worry about using a higher ISO number than you would like. And I feel like this is the only real photography tip I've given you in this one or directly relating to settings. And that's because it's such a big one. It's such a big mistake that many new photographers make. I really kind of wanted to call that one out here and just make sure that you're not doing that. Okay. Number 6, don't worry about editing for now. Now, although I did mention editing just now, right back at the beginning when I said there's so much to learn, and I mentioned it just now about how you can solve or fix noise in editing. So editing is a big part of the photography process. So I always think of it as 2 sides of the same coin. We have what we do in camera is so important, probably the most important part, but then editing is equally important. It's where we can do those tweaks to our images that can make such a huge difference. So it's a massive part of the photography process. But I wouldn't worry too much about editing when you are still learning your camera and learning about light. So I spent an absolutely insane amount of time editing my photos in the beginning, which basically involved me trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I was basically taking loads of time, spending hours trying to fix the problems that wouldn't have been there if I just learned to use my camera properly and realized that an image with bad light and bad composition can't magically be made better just by a little editing. So focus first on learning the basics. So we spoke about that, about shooting in manual mode, make sure you're getting beautifully exposed, tack sharp images, you understand focus, and that you've got the basics of using light and composition beautifully in any camera. You can then go and learn how to edit them to take them to the next level. Get that baseline great in camera first. You want to get to a point where the image you take in camera is good. You could shade it probably quite happily from what you've taken in camera. It's got good light, it's got good exposure, your subjects are well lit, it's got good focus, and you've got good composition. And then you can learn how to edit it, and that is going to take your images above and beyond. It's going to go again to that next level. Remember, we're doing all of this in steps. Now, ideally, when we get to learning about editing, you're going to want to learn how to take the steering wheel and drive your editing program yourself rather than relying on presets or action, because that's the best way of bringing your photo to life. So as a result, it's a whole new other thing to learn. So take it in steps. Start with learning your camera, shooting in manual mode, learn about light, learn about composition, tack sharp focus, and then you can move on to learning how to edit your photos. But for now, just making very simple adjustments in your editing software, maybe tweaking the contrast or tweaking the exposure if it was slightly underexposed, for example. That's all you really need to focus on for now, and you can take the next step later. Okay, number 7. Oh, this is a big one. You don't need expensive gear. Now, photographers, and I include myself in this, I'm completely guilty of this one. I love a bit of lens talk, and I am terrible for buying lenses. So I love it. And therefore, right in the beginning, it's easy to get caught up in the feeling of, if only I had a better camera, or if I could just afford a better lens, then my images would look more like X's, like your favorite photographers or whomever. And here's a problem. What you're doing here is you're looking for a quick fix. And I get that. I mean, we all lead such incredibly busy lives that we have to take shortcuts when we can. And I'm a huge fan of shortcuts. Believe me, if I can take a shortcut, I will take it. But a better camera or a lens will not be the thing that automatically fixes your image problems. So doing what I mentioned already, learning your camera, shooting in manual mode, learning about light, getting better focus, that's what's needed to make your images look better. And you can do that with the camera that you already have. So whatever camera and lens you have now, you will be able to get good images from it. Now, all that does not mean to say that upgraded gear is worthless. Of course it not. But it can only give back what you put in. A $3,000 camera on auto will give you roughly the same results as a $600 camera on auto. If you're not getting sharp images with your entry-level gear, a new camera will not make them a heck of a lot sharper. If you're using bad light, using a top-of-the-line camera will definitely 100% not make it any better. We cannot change the light. So if you're still feeling skeptical, then I want you to check out a couple of case studies we've actually got on the blog. Now, both of these case studies used entry-level cameras, basic lenses, and got amazing photos. I'm not going to read out the blog link because it's so big. I'll leave a link to them in the show notes for this episode and in the description. So check those out. And you can see the results that people can get from entry-level cameras and entry-level lenses when they know what they're talking about. So forget about gear right now. Again, just so you get those basics down. You can you'll upgrade later when you'll actually get the benefit of it. Of course, if you've got money to burn and you want to buy them right now, absolutely go for it. Then you're learning on a camera that will see you through for many, many years. But if you don't and you want to get better photos, you can get them with what you have by getting those basics down. Okay, number 8. And we've spoken a lot about exposure so far in manual mode and light. Another common source of frustration for new photographers is focus, or rather a lack of it. So tip number 8, or rather my share number 8, is there's more to sharp photos than just tips. Now, I get how annoying getting soft images is when you come back from a shoot, you look at the images on the back of your camera while you were taking the shots and they look sharp, but then you get them back to the screen on the computer, you zoom in and you realize that the image is just ever so slightly annoying bit soft again. So I get how annoying that is. It's one of those things you just like, you're so happy to upload them and then you feel like crying a second later. And I was also that person once, frantically asking people in random Facebook groups, why are my photos so soft? What have I done wrong here? And I would get super lovely people giving me helpful tips and tricks, but it never really solved the problem. And again, I'm going to go right back to the beginning here. Absolutely everything in photography is connected. It's only when you get all of the pieces working together that you'll be able to increase that hit rate of keepers. Even when you're shooting larger groups or, shooting crazed, erratic toddlers or, anything, that the more difficult it is to focus on, the less likely you are to get sharp photos. So again, we're coming back to that beginning there, that learning everything in order in photography is crucial. If you just learn a few tips and tricks, you've missed out some of the connecting dots. So I always liken it to tips and tricks as being like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. You're just trying to patch up this glaring hole with little bits and bobs. It's not going to do the job. Go and get sewn up. So learn the fundamentals, learn everything that we've spoken about so far, learn the basics of focus, learn about your focus modes, learn about your different focusing techniques and how everything chops and changes based on what you are using. Then most of your focus problems will go away. You will always miss focus, where none of us are going to get 100% tack sharp images all of the time when it comes to moving subjects. But you will vastly increase your hit rate of sharp images. And when getting still images, you'll get most of them will be sharp all of the time. So there's lots of things that you need to learn about focus. Tips and tricks aren't going to do it. You really do need to take a holistic approach to this and learn about all the other aspects and about focus. And again, if you do want to grab that free blueprint, that photography starter guide, the checklist, the 3-month guide, go and grab that. That's livesnaplove.com/blueprint. Number 9. So we're racing along here. Let's get on to number 9. And this is a big one. And that is, you'll get worse before you get better. Now, it has to be said, and I'm going to be very honest with you here, that if you take my advice, and I hope you do, and you move away from the safety of having the camera make all the decisions for you, and instead take control yourself by shooting in manual mode, by taking control of your focus and so on, there's going to be a period where you feel like you're getting worse. And that's because you are. And I want you to know that this is 100% normal. A good analogy is to think of it as learning how to walk. You don't just suddenly go from crawling, stand upright, and instantly kind of start strolling about, with getting great strides. You don't. You kind of take a few tentative steps and then you fall down and then you fall over again and then you fall over again and then you bash your head off the coffee table and you start wailing. And if you have children and you've watched them take their first steps, you can see just how kind of it takes that while to build it up. Even when you kind of get going and you kind of get the hang of being on 2 legs, it's taking you longer to get to where you want to be than if you had just crawled there. I was actually something with my son. He was a super fast crawler and he would get to one end of the room and the other in like nanoseconds. And he actually kept crawling for ages because he'd start to walk and it took him longer with that, that slow sort of John Wayne steps that they do to begin with, that he would just go back down to crawling and scoot across. And that is pretty much what happens when you are learning photography. You get worse to begin with. You are slower. You're slower at changing your settings because you've got more things to think about. And therefore, it feels like, I just want to go back. I want to go back to shooting in aperture priority mode because this is taking too long. You're like my son learning to walk where it was faster to crawl, so you want to do that. But you are smart enough to know that, or your parents were, that you had to go through falling down, bashing your head on the coffee table, being slower in order to grow and learn something. Failing is just part and parcel of learning something new. But here's the thing I crucially want you to remember, and I'll go back to my analogy again here. Once you've learned how to walk, you won't ever revert back to crawling again. You realize that actually, you know what? Crawling is not going to get me where I want to be. Well, unless you've had a few too many margaritas and you need to kind of make it upstairs to your bed. But generally speaking, once you've learned how to walk, you pretty much stay walking. And that is exactly the same for learning photography. When you make those steps, when you make those big changes, it is scary. It will slow you down. It will take you longer to get your settings right. And I just want to say now, push through it. Accept the fact that you need to get worse before you can get better. And then you will reap the rewards at the other end. Okay, number 10. We're getting near the end. We've only got 2 more to go. So number 10, not every image needs to be wall worthy. So I struggled with this because I wanted sort of every single photo that I took to be a masterpiece. But I want you to kind of just realize now that you can create photos that are just for you. And they're more about capturing a memory than learning photography or winning any awards or being a particularly great photograph with amazing light and fantastic composition. You can take photos that you intended to be better than they were, but they just turned out to be bland and forgettable. Who cares? So I want you to remember this, that when you look at photographers on Instagram or you look at portfolios, you are seeing their best, or at least they're better than average. Sometimes they'll take an absolutely amazing photograph, and other times their photos will be great, but they're not their best. They will also have lots of photos that didn't make it even to the editing stage. They just looked at them, they've taken several images of the same thing, they've deleted half of them and edited a few. They edited their best. And then out of them, they might only have shared a few on social media. So you're only seeing someone's highlight reel, the bits that they've chosen to show you, first of all. They will also have numerous snapshots that, only a grandmother will love. There's no photographic competence. I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's no genius to it photography-wise. You just picked up the camera and took a shot or to capture a moment. And they're great too. So you're going to have these different levels of photographs on your hard drive. I just wanted to say, don't worry about it. Everyone takes average photos. Every single photographer will take images that are they just downright suck. They're not that good at all. So never, ever, ever think that just because you aren't cranking out amazing photo after amazing photo after amazing photo, you're doing something wrong. You're not. You're just doing what everybody who does creative work does. They're making iterations. If a portrait artist starts to make a portrait, it doesn't start from this kind of blank page and immediately go. They have rough sketches of what they want to do. In some ways, you're doing that with your images as well. And again, I'll go back to that. Failure is all part of progression. We take photos, and a lot of the time I'll take photos from lots of different angles and until I hit on the one that's actually got it. Sometimes I don't hit on it. You'll never see them. You'll never know about them because they're safely tucked away in my hard drive, or I've deleted them entirely. And I have a hard drive probably full. I could do a whole, hard drive full of images that I've taken them, but I could have taken them with my iPhone or anything else. They aren't particularly great photos, but they captured a moment in time that I didn't want to forget. So always forget, no photo is bad. It's either teaching you something. It's either just getting your eye in or, helping you to learn something, or it's there to capture a moment in time. But crucially, I just wanted you to know that, you are seeing people's highlight reels when you see them on Instagram or their portfolio or their blog. You're not seeing all the other hundreds of images that they have that are just okay, or just didn't nail the spot entirely, or didn't nail focus, or anything else that can go wrong in an image. So my final one for you today, actually before I get that, I'm going to just quickly recap on the 10 that have come before. I was waiting to say I was sounding like the top 10 there, when you used to get the music countdown, or maybe some of you are too young to remember that. But so number one is that there's a lot to learn. You're not going to learn this overnight. You've got a long journey ahead of you. You'll always be learning new things, but that's what makes it so fun and so interesting. The second one is to make sure that you take it one step at a time so that you're learning things in order, and crucially, you'll pick up all the things that connect all the dots together. Number 3 was that shooting in manual mode matters. So if you're still in aperture priority mode, make that switch today. It will help you, it will pay you back tenfold on your photography journey. 4 was that the light was the key component of any image. So after you've finished learning about manual mode, move on to light. Number 5 was don't fear using a high ISO. If that's what you need to get a properly exposed image, make sure that you use that ISO number. Number 6 was don't worry about editing for now. Number 7 was you don't need expensive gear. You'll be able to take great photos with what you have, and you can upgrade later when you see exactly what you need to get better photos. Number 8 was there's more to sharp photos than just tips. That comes back to our learning things in order. There's a lot to learn about focus. You aren't just going to pick up everything from learning a few quick tips and tricks. Number 9 is you'll get worse before you'll get better. It's all just part and parcel of learning something new. You will have to go through a little bit of failure, a little bit of slowing down, until you get through to the other side. Number 10 was that not all images need to be wall worthy. You are going to get a lot of images that just don't hit the mark. They just fail for one reason off another. They might just not be good light, not be good composition, might be a bit boring, they might not nail focus, or they might just be more about capturing a moment than they were about any kind of photography prowess. And that's fine. And number 11, and this is my big one, I've saved it till last. It is don't get distracted. We live in a world where there has never been so much easy access to information. We can get info from places like blogs, Facebook groups, YouTube, podcasts, forum, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok. Oh, I could probably keep going. But all that is happening is we're getting information overload. And we start to feel overwhelmed and bombarded from every corner. And we're getting sometimes conflicting information, or we're getting information that doesn't connect to what we've learned before. Again, going back to number 1 and number 2 on this list. And that's because we're getting this information overload. We're actually getting too much information. The best advice that I can possibly leave you with is this. Try your very, very best to only focus on the next step in your journey and block out everything else that doesn't help you reach that next step. I can tell you this, if you keep getting waylaid by different things you find in blog posts, Facebook groups, podcasts, Instagram, TikTok videos, it is going to take you roughly 10 times as long to learn photography, but it's also going to make the journey 10 times harder and 10 times more frustrating. All this zipping around may feel like you're getting somewhere, but don't confuse activity with accomplishment. The shortcut to great photographs is not a set of hidden tricks. It's not about this quick tip that you're going to learn from a pro on Instagram. It is not going to be this little shortcut that somebody shares with you on TikTok. None of those quick tips are going to help you much in the long term. It is about learning the steps in a logical and linked path. It is about taking the time to truly learn your craft. And this is the surprising thing. And if you remember nothing else from this podcast episode, remember this. When you commit to truly learning your craft, instead of endlessly searching for something that will help you get there faster or cheaper, you'll find that your photography path actually shrinks and you'll get there in way less time. So that is the biggest thing for me. I took 3 years of learning from blogs, learning from the internet. TikTok wasn't around then, but from various other places, not making that switch, not wanting to take a course, just thinking that I could do this by myself. And if I just got enough of this information together, then I would get to where I wanted to be. 3+ years, nearly 4 actually. And then I took a course and I learned everything in a matter of weeks. Now, admittedly, I already had a lot of knowledge already. So I was piecing together the bits of random information that I'd found before. And that course helped me just fill in that gaps that I hadn't known to search for, things that I hadn't known that I needed to know. And when I did, all that random information I had came together. All the bits I didn't know helped connect all those dots. And I was there within a matter of weeks. And I could have wanted to honestly bang my head off a wall at that point because I could have been there right at the very beginning in just a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months, rather 2-3 months, probably if I'd been starting right from scratch, rather than the 3 to 4 years that it took me. So 3 to 4 months versus 3 to 4 years, that was a shortcut. And I hadn't realized it. So that is what I want you to know. Now, I will finish off by saying that if you would like me to take you by the hand and teach you everything you need to know in the order you need to learn it, with all the little bits and bobs that connect all the dots, then be sure to get yourself into Auto 2 Awesome. And this is my step-by-step program for new photographers or for photographers who feel like they have a lot of information but can't get the image that they see in their head. And I will be with you every single step of the way, and I will help you get your images out of your head and into the world where they belong. Now, if you want that little sneak peek into what you need to learn and the order you need to learn it, then be sure to pick up that free guide I mentioned. I've laid it all out for you there in case you want to kind of go it alone, in which case, go for it. Pick up the free starter kit. And if you want just someone to give you all the information, all laid out for you, all in the order you need to learn it, each step linking on to the last, then make sure to check out Auto to Awesome as well. You can find out more about Auto to Awesome at livesnaplove.com/auto-2-awesome. That is livesnaplove.com/auto-2-awesome. And again, I'll leave a link to that in the description. So as always, thank you so much for being here. Know that I appreciate you taking the time to listen to these podcasts. If you want to come and connect with me on social media, you'll find me as LiveSnapLove on both Instagram and Facebook. I'm not super active there, but I love listening to your comments and connecting with you. It's the only reason I stay on social media. So come say hi and you can talk to me there or ask any questions. And if you do enjoy the podcast, then I would really appreciate you doing a couple of things. The first would be leaving a review. If you can rate the podcast, leave a quick comment, then that helps other people realize what a fantastic podcast and useful this is. The other thing I would really appreciate is if you can share it. If you can share it with your, if you have friends on Facebook or Instagram, share it on there, share it with a friend who's learning photography. If you can share it, I'd really appreciate that too. So if you can do those things, that would be absolutely amazing. So once again, thank you for being here, and I will see you again, same time, same place next week. Bye for now.